Hello, and welcome to another episode of Child Abuse Awareness with Darlene J. Clark. There have been so many people wanting to ask me questions. Before I start, I like to play a song that I had written based on an ex-boyfriend a long while back, and I'll let y'all hear the music that I had and a friend of mine had played.
Empty promises, believing all your lies, wanting me to sympathize with your lies.
Like I said, this is based on an ex-boyfriend. Now that's my childhood.
I'm hoping to be loved, I'm hoping for romance. Needed to be held and give a love a chance. Well, I'm wanting to be caressed, but with your empty promises you crush my love.
He said this is based on an ex-boyfriend I had written a song for about years ago.
Thought that you were really smart. Oh, how you ripped my heart apart.
Thank you so much.
Needing you so much, believing you love me so. You promised to be mine. How could I have been so blind? So blind. I was promised loyalty, but I'm alone again. You promised you would love me to set my soul free. If our love was true, how could you break my heart in two? I was such a fool because I trusted you, pushed my love. You crushed my love. We're really smart. Oh, how you ripped my heart apart. Needing you so much, believing you love me so. You promised to be mine. How could I have been so blind? So I was promised loyalty, but I'm alone again.
Well, thank you. I had written that based on an ex-boyfriend, and this was back around 2000 that I had written this. And a friend of mine in the UK put it to music, and he sang it for me, and he sent it to me. So I just wanted to share that with you all as well, because I do enjoy writing music is also. So I have been on different podcasts, different streams, unfiltered stories, etc. And there have been some people want to know some questions about my life. So I'm hoping that some people show up where we can discuss these questions, if anybody has any. How are you doing today, Jackie? It's good to see you. Thanks for coming in and supporting. Yes, he did. He said he went ahead and did that to cheer me up because he knew that I was going through a bad time. It really made my day. It was kind of funny that after my said boyfriend heard it, he goes, "That's my song. You got to give it to me." And I'm like, "No, I don't give it to you. I wrote it. It belongs to me. It might be about you, but no, it's not your song. I didn't give it to you as a gift or nothing." I'm doing pretty good. Thank you so much. It's been a rough last couple of days. Well, to start out of my story, how I will go right here talking about the family dynamics. Daddy Charles was in the United States military stationed in Germany. He met Hilda at a bar. Hilda was my supposed birth mom. Hilda already had two known children, Gerald and Angelic. Daddy Charles and Hilda had a child together, Gwen, in Germany. They brought Gerald, Hope, and Gwen back from Germany. Yep, my grandmother's supposed to have. He was in Germany about 19. My sister was born in 1960 of August, so he had to be in there in 1959 for sure, and 1960 for sure. My sister Angelic and brother Gerald were supposed to, and I also called her Hope. I called her Angelic and I called her Hope. I got two different names for her. Yes, so it's after World War II. Yes. The grandparents had bought them, and so they were legally my grandparents' children. So my parents had no rights really to them. It's like kidnapping them and bringing them to the United States. So while up north in the United States, Charles Jr. was born. Hilda and Charles moved back to the South. While serving at the arsenal, Marlene and I were born. I supposedly kicked Marlene out. I was born about 20 minutes later. I was able to come home from the hospital a lot sooner than Marlene. I didn't know where we lived. Later on, Hilda and Charles would abandon us for about a week. Angelica and Gerald were not allowed to cook at that time, yet the bottles needed warming. But back then, they weren't allowed to turn on the stove, so Marlene and I had to drink cold milk. Can you imagine having to take care of four children while still in diapers? Marlene and I were infants. Charles Jr. was 1 year old and Gwen was 2 years old. Gerald and Hope, which is also angelic, were 7+ years older than me. Back then, there were cloth diapers. Angelic and Gerald had used T-shirts and whatever they could find. Aunt Zelda came over many times and would discover us abandoned again. She changed our diapers, fed us, and cleaned the house. She would then leave. Hope and Gerald had good hearts. They were supposed to attend school, but they couldn't leave us without someone taking care of our needs. One time, Daddy Charles got out of jail and he was angry. The door was secure. I was around 2 years old. Daddy had a gun and was shooting through the windows. Shards of glass and splintered wood were going everywhere. My older sister pushed me to the floor and laid on top of my small body to protect me. She later told me about that. And she told me the story behind it. But she said Daddy was actually trying to shoot me. And since I talked to a relative, another cousin that lived right down the road, because we lived in my aunt's rental house, and there was like 3 or 4 houses that the relatives had owned and lived in. Like that whole street was basically owned by the relatives except for one little bitty avenue. But he said, "Yeah, we would go over there quite a bit." He said, "I would go over there." He was a older teenager or so, and he admitted, he said, "Man, yo, as soon as I changed one diaper, had to change another diaper. By the time I got there changing all the diapers, had to go back and change another diaper." You know, Like, okay, okay, get it. I get it. Marlene and I were 2 years old. Derek was born. While Hilda was still in the hospital, I had trouble breathing. I do not know what happened to Daddy Charles's vehicle. He was running up and down the side of a major road to get help. A police officer stopped. He tried to give me mouth to mouth, but it didn't work. The officer drove Dad and me to the hospital. The emergency physician administered a tracheotomy. The doctor admitted me to the hospital to try to find the cause. I was there for 2 weeks, but they couldn't find the problem. I had found out later that I was adopted by all the nurses. They sent me home with a big stuffed teddy bear. Yeah, it's hard working. Yeah, looking after young children. But it's horrible, if she wanted to keep having the kids for labor purposes or whatever their sick desires were. And my sister, that Angelic, she remembers us all sitting there being hungry and us having to eat raw oatmeal. She said Mom will be gone for about a week. So we just see those kids eating rice in Africa. We were sitting around just eating raw oatmeal. So I feel for those kids in Africa. When Derek was 2 years old, Hilda started abandoning the five of us. Gwen, Charles Jr., Marlene, Derek, and I were abandoned in a grocery store. Luckily, Gwen knew my aunt's phone number. She would come to pick us up. She kept us with her until Hilda came back to get us about a week later. Yeah. I suppose Angelica and Gerald were in an orphanage. My aunt grew tired of Mom Hilda abandoning us. So one time when Hilda came to pick us up, my aunt put up a fight and refused to let have us back. Hilda and Charles got a divorce and had a custody battle in which my dad won. Dad met a lady named Sue. Sue had 2 children named Bart and May. Bart was 2 years older than me, and May was 1 year older. Then married and had a boy named Paul. I kept claiming that he was my baby. I wanted to hold him. Later on, they had another boy, and he died. Any questions about that? So Savannah was put in an orphanage. Angelic. She was put in an orphanage because of she was sold to a police officer, and my sister ran away. So mom went and put her in an orphanage to discipline her. Then she went and got her back out of the orphanage to take her back to the police officers. And then my sister ran away again, and then mom got her again and put her back in an orphanage, where my sister ended up aging out of the orphanage. When I told my sister about the stuff that my daddy done to me, about my dad cutting me between my legs when I was 4, she said, I don't know why he would do that, with the exception of she remembers dad coming back from Germany with a book on how to have sex with kids. So that's the only explanation that she could think on why daddy would do that. She said that she didn't think daddy would harm his own kids. She wasn't daddy's child because mom Hilda had her prior. She never knew who her father was. And my brother Mike is deceased as well, and he never exactly. Gerald said Mike. The bunk bed incidents. I woke up at the top bunk of a bunk bed. I didn't recall how I got there. I did not know where I was. I heard the television and what I had thought to be the living room. I watched its blue glares dance across the paneled walls. I was petrified since I was unfamiliar with my surroundings. I always knew my twin sister Marlene was somewhere around, but I knew I had to be quiet. Children are to be seen and not heard. I nervously whispered out her name. Marlene, Marlene, Marlene. Still there was no answer. I assumed she would be on the bottom bunk. I got a little closer to the edge as I leaned on the railing and whispered, Marlene, Marlene, where are we? I waited a little while, but Marlene did not answer me. I got braver and called out her name a little louder. Marlene, Marlene, please answer me. Where are we? I wanted to cry. I decided to lean over the railing as I attempted to gain her attention. I saw she was not in bed. I began worrying about her. This is a strange house. None of my five siblings are around. The scene's like a small place. I'm used to bigger places, open areas. I am not used to confined areas. I found out later this was a trailer. I was flabbergasted. I nervously attempted to get back away from the railing and get back on my pillow. The next thing I knew was wham! The railing broke, sending my small 7-year-old body flailing to the floor like a rag doll. I saw the railing line on the floor. I knew I was going to land on the board face first. I woke up sitting in the emergency room with the doctor examining me. I could hardly see when I came to. The doctor was looking into my eyes with his flashlight as he said, She's okay. I was wondering why he would say this. I didn't feel okay. I was confused, only understanding bits and pieces of what was happening. As Dad and Sue pushed my wheelchair to the car, one of them quipped, We forgot something. Dad went back into the hospital and Sue and I waited. At first I could not see who it was in the other wheelchair. I felt a strange sensation run through my body as I recognized the thin girl. It was Marlene. I could not believe it. I did not know she was in the hospital. I did not understand why I was not told. I knew better than to ask, but Sue and Charles knew I was confused. Sue brazenly stated Marlene was in the hospital for 4 days with pneumonia. She ran outside naked in the snow and got sick. It was stupid of her, but she does stupid things. I was bewildered as I did not know any of this. What was going on? I should have known. And according to my sister Marlene, what had happened was they got her naked and put her naked body outside and locked her outside. What kid would want to step outside in the frozen snow with ice and everything around? What kid? I know of no kid that would want to do that. So she was in the hospital with pneumonia because of that. This is a little gist on some of the stuff. There was a Betty Carl show, which was the next thing, and that was not a bad story. It was kind of humorous. I don't know if y'all want to hear. Jackie, do you want to hear that humorous story? Don't know if you want to hear it or not. But it actually was not one of the bad ones. It was actually a good one. Or it was such a big surprise when Mom Hilda and our new stepdad, David Smith, showed up to pick up Marlene and me up to the Benny Carl show in Huntsville, Alabama. David arrived in a camper pickup truck. Mom Hilda and David went to the back of the camper. My eyes were filled as big as lollipops with excitement. I had never ridden in a camper before. Daddy David loved the excitement of Marlene and my face. I asked, Where do I sit? David replied, You can sit anywhere your heart desires. Mom Hilda, Marlene, and I rode in the back while Daddy David drove. It was so neat seeing the kitchenette. I had never thought it would all fit. I sat at a table where Marlene sat across from me. Mom Hilda was instructing us to be on our best behavior since we were going to be on television. I did not understand that concept. We arrived at the studio. Our seats were a smaller set of bleachers. I chose to sit right beside the cute dark haired boy. Marlene and the cute boy and I all sat up top, and just a few others on the row, and there were other rows below us. Mr. Benny offered us a 16-ounce bottle of RC or double cola. I never had my very own drink before. I was shocked. Benny started talking with the child at my far right. He was asking her questions. I noticed we were to give bottles back to Benny as he spoke to each one of us individually. I was not finished with my drink. There was no way I was about to give him my bottle. I wasn't done. I stuck it further into my mouth as the acid started choking me a tad. I did not cough or open my mouth, but they welled up. I paid no attention to the camera guy. Mr. Benny asked me, "What is your name?" I temporarily took the clenched bottle out of my mouth. "My name is Darlene," I stated as I was about to put the bottle back in my mouth. Mr. Benny asked, "Is this your birthday today?" I knew to have manners, so I replied, "Yes, sir. It's mine and Marlene's 7th birthday." I put the bottle back into my mouth. He teasingly asked, "Please give me the bottle." I was adamant. I stuck the bottle further into my mouth as I shook my head. No. Mr. Benny would take a step to the boy beside me, and then he stepped back, as if playing with me. He again said, "Give me that bottle." I saw the camera guy rotate the camera around and around and around. Mr. Benny Carl was so nice that he let me finish my birthday soda. When Marlene and I got home, Gwen was seated in front of the television set. Gwen stated, "Darlene, how did you do that trick?" I asked, "What trick?" She said, "Can you teach me that trick? How did you drink soda while turning flips?" I did not know what Gwen was talking about. Sue said, "That was a cameraman rotating the camera as he was filming." I shrugged my shoulders as I proceeded to leave the room. I did not know what anyone was talking about, but now it was hilarious. Oh, man. I just shrugged my shoulders and went on. Have you got any questions about anything you ever known about my life that you heard me talk about that you wonder? Anybody got any questions they would like to know from anything? You ever have a parent where you could not backtalk no matter what? You did what they said. You did not. You do not do that. Okay, I'm getting past the first week. Just listening to me. Okay. There was a teacher incident that I had said how a teacher had fussed at me. It was my twin sister. She had another room. Oh, you got belted for backtrack? Oh, man. I think no matter what, we got belted. If I stared at Daddy a lot instead of said anything. But I'm sure I cried, and I think that infuriated them more whenever I cried when they hurt me. But a kid, if you're gonna do these sexual things to them, it's gonna hurt. They're gonna cry if their stomach is hurting so bad if they're hungry. They can't help it. It's just a part of it. One incident that did not seem as significant, but I still put it in my book, was the home permanent. Sue said, "Sandra, our neighbor, is experiencing styling people's hair. We're going next door to let her give you a permanent." We were in the living room while Sue was sitting down on the couch watching and chit chatting with Sandra. Sandra lit a cigarette, which is pretty bad. You're doing somebody's hair, you light up a cigarette, right? I kept working on my hair. The permanent solution was blue. I believe it was called something like Dippity Doo. Sandra was separating my hair to curl another portion when she dropped her cigarette. She said, "Oh well, I'm almost finished curling, so I'll look for the cigarette in a minute." I was wearing blue polyester pants. The lit cigarette fell between my thighs. I was about to say something, but my stepmom, Sue, put her finger to her mouth while giving me the silent motion. Sue saw it fall. She knew it was burning me. I knew no matter how much the burning hurt, I had to obey Sue. I tightly clenched my thighs in an attempt to put out the cigarette. It worked, but my thighs were feverishly burning. Sandra finished curling my hair and proceeded to look for for the cigarette. She could not find it. She said, "I know it fell, but I cannot find it." Come in. Hold on. Somebody's knocking at the door. I don't know who it is. Oh, that's you. Probably be a lot more when I go to the store. Okay. Bless them. A neighbor just came and he brought some arts and crafts. His sister passed away not too long ago. So I go back to um, Sandra finished curling my hair and proceeded to look for the cigarette. She could not find it. She said, "I know it fell, but I cannot find it." She then tried to force my legs apart. I fought hard, trying to keep my legs together. I was afraid if she found it, Sue would be furious with me. I was too embarrassed. Sue forced my legs apart. Sandra forced my legs apart and was flabbergasted when she found the unlit cigarette. She nervously asked me, "Why did you not tell me?" Sue replied, "Yeah, why did you not tell her?" She put her finger to her mouth again, motioned for me not to answer. Sandra cared and tried to soothe me. She sorrowfully said, "I should have looked for it as soon as I dropped it. You put it out with your thighs, you poor child. I am so sorry." I love this sympathy. It hurt me more not being allowed to respond. I had tears welling up from hearing Sanders' caring words. After Sandra finished styling my newly permed hair, Sue and I went back home next door. We moved yet again after this incident. When I look back and see how often we have moved, I cannot help but wonder if it was because of another investigation of Dad and Sue abusing us. We moved into one of my aunt's rental houses until we moved again a few months later. And when you got the polyester pants, you know what that does when you got a hot objects that it literally melts your pants. So it melted onto my skin. The polyester thing it made a hole on both sides of my pants, and both of my thighs had melted, burned marks on it. So that's some of the cruelty that she was responsible for, even though, my brother wants to say that she's a godsend. Do you think that's a godsend? Saying at 17 years old that, oh, back when you were 4 years old, I stopped your temper tantrums by holding your head down and seek for water till you lost your consciousness. How in the heck is that a godsend? The only way I know I survived is because of God. Yes, it is. We learned to not complain. We learned not to cry. We learned to just take it. Most kids would have jumped up. They would have screamed. They would have done this, but I knew I was not allowed to do that. It's like we were robots. We were already trained. We were already conditioned take whatever. And of course, when she put her finger to her mouth, she knew the cigarette dropped between my legs. She knew it had because she saw it because she put her finger to her mouth for me to be quiet and not say a thing. And for pet's sake is what I named this part. And we moved up a windy road. It was dirt and had rocks. It was dangerous to ride a bike down the steep hill. You might end up in the bushes. Stray dogs came into our yard. It was horrible when Dad drove to a bridge and stopped. He got the dog to drop him or her off the bridge. I was worried that someday he would throw me over the side. Dad commented about his disbelief when one dog came back twice. The last time it did not come back, so I felt she died from the long drop. One dog came back every time he had thrown him from the bridge. He returned and Dad quipped, "If he wants to stay that bad, just stay." He was a cute, smaller beagle. We named him Joe. Joe helped my brother, Paul, to walk. He was a patient dog. Oh, yeah, it is a devil's work. You got that right. And then any decent human would grab the cigarette and make sure you're okay. Exactly. She knew where it fell, and she put her finger to her lip for me to remain silent. Here's another part of one of her instances of her being evil. Here's the right or left, okay? We moved again about 30 minutes from my aunt's rental house. I kept picking everything up with my left hand. It infuriated Sue. She angrily yelled, but at this time I was 9 years old. She angrily yelled, "Women are not left handed. They are only right handed." At dinner time, I picked up my fork with my left hand. It felt so natural. She looked so irate she could have thrown darts at me with her eyes. She roared, "Put your fork down and do it right." I thought I was doing it right. Here I am, 9 years old. Why is she waiting to correct me this now after I've been in school for several years? I did what was natural for me and picked up my fork with my left hand again. It was difficult not using my left hand. Sue stood up from her chair, ran to me, and tightly grabbed my right hand, forcing me to pick up the fork. She forced a fork with food into my mouth. Oh my, it hurt tremendously with some of the prongs of the fork jabbed my lips, my tongue, and the side of my mouth close to my cheek area. Tears began to well up in my eyes, but I knew not to let Sue see me with tears, or she would have spanked me, saying, "I will give you something to cry about." A few days later, Sue informed me that May was bringing home a boyfriend, Philip, to have dinner with us. May was my older stepsister by 1 year. Dinner time came, and I was the only one not eating. I watched Sue as she glared at me furiously to see which hand I used to pick up the fork. I was trembling with fear as I was playing back Sue's earlier threats. Earlier, Sue yelled, "You best follow the rules by not using your left hand to pick up your fork or even your drink, or I will spank you whether we have company or not." I drew in a deep breath while slowly moving my hand to the fork as Sue glared at me with fury. I did it. I used my right hand. Sue would leave me alone for now. Thank you, God. May's boyfriend Philip asked, "Darlene, why aren't you eating earlier?" I knew not to say anything. He saw me shaking while I was staring at my stepmom, Sue. She was seething mad as she got back at me. Philip replied, "You seem like you've beaten a lot. You seem scared to move." Inwardly, I was thinking, "Uh-oh, I'm in trouble." Sue laughed while stating she was just shy. Philip said, "I don't think so. I am leaving after dinner. I do not want to see any of you except Darlene. I can see you treat her badly." He is very intuitive for a 10-year-old boy. He never came back ever again. We moved again soon after that. Use both hands. Got use my right. Got me to do that at school, but at home I use my left. That's what I start grabbing everything with my left hand and stuff too. This is the story I've completely forgot all about. It's like I had known about God even before they even taught me, right? And here's that little story about that. A church. Daddy Charles drove us to a church one Sunday morning. The moment my foot hit the gravel in the parking lot, I felt the strong sensation, I am home. We went into Sunday school classes. I remember seeing a picture of Jesus nailed to the cross. It was familiar to me for some reason. I was around 8 or 9 years old. The teacher, Mrs. Kelly, started the class by asking, "Who knows who that man on the cross is?" I raised my hand. Miss Kelly said, "Put your hand back down. You don't know the answer. You were not taught about God." She asked a question again. I wasn't going to lie. I knew who that man was. I raised my hand again. She quipped, "Darlene, I know you do not know who the answer is. Put your hand back down." Miss Kelly again asked, "Who knows who that man is on the cross?" I kept my hand down for fear of being reprimanded. I turned around to see the other kids to see if anyone had their hands raised. A cute little boy put his hand back down when he saw me looking at him. Miss Kelly quizzically stated, "I know a bunch of you have been taught. I know you know the answer. So who would tell me who the man on the cross is?" I raised my hand and was waving it because I wanted her to pick me to answer. Kelly sighed and said, "Okay, Darlene, go ahead and tell us, though I know you don't know the answer." I proudly explained, "That's Jesus." Her jaw dropped. "Okay, you know that it is Jesus, but you won't know why he's on that cross. Who knows why Jesus is on the cross?" There went my hand up again. Miss Kelly said, "Okay, Darlene, why is Jesus on that cross?" I answered, "Jesus died on the cross to save us from our sins." After Sunday school, I saw Miss Kelly, Daddy Charles, and Sue discussing me. Miss Kelly asked them how I knew. Daddy Charles and Sue both said, "I don't know. We did not teach her. We can't believe she knew all this." We started attending that church. It especially was a joy during vacation Bible school. That was ironic. They never taught me, but I don't know how I knew. You know what I'm saying? I don't know how I knew. They don't know how I knew. They said, "We never taught her." You rather do left-handed stuff? I notice a lot of times that my natural thing, like right now, I'm using my left hand to use the mouse key on the laptop. I'm not using my right. So she was around me today, but she's dead now. Okay, sorry. Life at home was like Daddy Charles was summoning all of us into a room. He made me step forward. He hit me in my head, knocking my 10-year-old body to the floor. He told my siblings, Gerald, about 17 years old, and a kicker at the high school football team, Bart, age 12, Gwen, age 12, Charles Jr., age 11, May, age 11, and Marlene, age 10, to kick me all over my body. I curled up my body into a fetal position. As they were kicking me, Dad instructed them to kick me as hard as they could. They circled me, kicking me all at the same time. When they were kicking me, they had to call me fat, stupid, ugly, and retarded. "Darlene, you're fat," they yelled. "Kick, kick, kick," Dad ordered. "Kick harder. Kick as hard as you can." The siblings said, "Darlene, you're stupid and retarded. Kick, kick, kick." I cannot remember when it stopped or even when I got off the floor. I sometimes woke up in bed with my aunt wiping me off with a wet cloth. She told everyone I was coming to. My stepmom came in. She was irked at me because I was unconscious and I had wet the bed. I'm not sure how long I was out of it, but they refused to get me any medical attention. Sue would tie the wet bed sheet around my neck, making me wear it all day long. And then Sewer Daddy Charles called us at dinner table. Back then we ate at the kitchen table. We did not take our food to the living room as we do today. The table was the only spot to eat unless we had a picnic or ate bologna sandwiches. We usually ate sandwiches when we went to the park to play ball. There were 9 children and 2 adults, so we kids had picnic benches as our chairs at the table. We had our plate of food, but we all had to pass around the same glass of sweet iced tea. We were lucky if we had 2 sips out of the entire glass. Hello, Ronan. God bless you. If you got any question, Ronan, I'll be glad to answer a question. If you got any questions that you had seen, I'll be glad to answer them. That's what I'm here for. Just went ahead and laughed and just see one person now. On many occasions, Dad would be furious with me because I had trouble breathing. Sometimes he made me stop eating my dinner and get an entire raw onion for my meal. I was not allowed my plate of food. Those nights, my only meal was the onion, nothing more. On other occasions, Dad called Darlene, you're a dog. I had bronchitis. The coughs from bronchitis are rough sounding. I also had a rattle in my chest. He ordered, Darlene, get down on the floor. I looked at Dad in shame as I did as instructed. I knew what was next. Dad bellowed, get on all fours like a dog. When I got into the ordered position, he instructed, bark at your food. Bark like a dog. I began barking at the food as tears streamed down my cheeks. Dad said, that's not good enough. Sound like a dog. Bark loudly. Daddy Charles was so mean, he exclaimed, bark at your food that is on the floor. I was so humiliated, tears streaming down my face as I tried to catch my breath from crying so hard. He proceeded to tell me to go to my room without eating because I did not want to bark at my food. Tears were flooding down my face like a broken dam. I had no desire to eat after going through this turmoil. An hour later, I was called back to eat. Dad pointed to the food on the floor and yelled, bark at it. It better sound like a real bark. I kept barking, and Dad finally said, that's good enough. To further humiliate me, he dumped the plate of food onto the floor. Dad happily ordered, now eat it. I looked up and said, I do not have a fork nor a spoon. Dad replied, eat it like a dog. Lick it up as a dog does. Occasionally bark and growl as if someone was trying to take the food away. I obeyed Dad because I knew he would keep it up all night until I did as I was told. Here's the thing about Steve Normandy. He was a cousin. Steve Normandy was a heavy-set man. His body structure was one like Santa Claus. He had a lazy eye. He was a grown man. When I was about 10 years old, I wondered why I feared him. To my dismay, I found out why. Steve still lived with his parents, my great uncle and great aunt. There was neither an indoor bathroom nor running water. I used to love wandering outside looking for fossils. They seemed to surround the small shack. There was a lot of junk that stayed outside and which they tried to sell. I was about 9 years old. As I was wandering around, Steve approached me. He grabbed me and started a game by swinging me in between his legs and back up. At first, it was fun. It made it feel weird when he started sliding me on his body. First, his belly touched me. I said, this is not fun anymore. Please stop. He went on swinging me as he glided my body down his private area. Please let me go. I knew Dad, my stepmom, Sue, my aunt and uncle, my siblings were around somewhere. Steve jerked my arm as he dragged me back into the back door of the small shack. His body language told me I had better be quiet and do as he wanted or else. He pulled me into the bedroom. I was scared to yell. Everything was happening too fast. He pushed me onto the bed as he gripped my right arm. Steve fumbled with his buckle feverishly as he pulled his pants down. Dad started calling my name. Steve was trying to pull my panties down as he exposed his you know. It scared me. Do I yell? What should I do? Finally, after Dad yelled, "You better come now," my cousin reluctantly let go of me. I was shaking nervously as I bolted out the bedroom door. I rushed, afraid Dad and Sue were going to discipline me since I did not come right away. I pushed the front door as the door springs made a screeching noise. I was shaking so badly. I took a deep breath as I climbed into the rear of the van. Then we left. I think my dad was about to ask me questions, but Sue told him I was nervous to let me calm down. She matter of factly whispered, "You can tell Steve tried to do something to Darlene." They didn't go back trying to fight. You know what I mean? They didn't go back and try to beat him up, knowing what he just did to me. They're just like, okay, it's okay for it to happen. That's sickening, ain't it? And trying to get past this part. And here's the portion of Dad's version of hide go seek. This will be hard to read and understand. It was difficult living it. It validates I had God watching out for me. Although the cruelty had stopped, my life was spared. When I was 10 years old, my dad came into the girls' bedroom. We all shared a bedroom as well as the boys. Daddy Charles walked in with a 12-gauge shotgun wielded at his side. I thought, oh no, here we go again. Dad replied, "Who's ready for hide and seek? If I see any of you, I will then shoot at you." I thought, one day someone is going to get killed. I believe Dad recovered so well by claiming it was an accident. I shot at a squirrel or another animal, but Darlene got away. That sort of excuse. We all ran and hid. I was not sure where everyone else hid. I often wondered where because they hid so well. I ran and hid in the garden behind a hard dirt mound. Dad was chasing Sue around the house while shooting into the sky. Sue was laughing gleefully as he was chasing her and shooting upwards with his 12 gauge. I briefly felt safe. Thank you so much. And I'm going to make sure Ronan's in there notified. Thank you. God bless you too. Sue was laughing gleefully as he was chasing her and shooting upwards with his 12 gauge. I briefly felt safe. It grew deathly quiet. I wondered where Dad was. I wondered if he was close to me. I prayed he got his mind on something else so this crazy deadly game would be over. I looked up from behind the hard dirt pile. I did not see Dad. I drew in a deep breath as I laid my head down onto the ground. My heart was racing wildly. I was so thankful he was not around. I was thankful he did not spot me. I knew he always found me first. A few minutes had passed in which it felt like an eternity. I decided to look up again. Oh no! Lord, please protect me. Dad saw me. He turned towards me and aimed the shotgun in my direction. I was praying hard. I knew I was dead. The next thing I knew, dirt went all over my body. I was shaking fearfully. And after the dust settled, I noticed a rock that was right in front of my face. The dirt had it covered. The rock saved my life. I knew it was God who protected me. Oh no, he's reloading while coming in my direction. It felt like everything was in slow motion. Dad was still approaching me while reloading his 12-gauge shotgun. I knew I was dead. Something told me not to run. I was to look him right in the face while I was approaching him, sorry. So I stood up and did as the inner voice was instructing me to do. I could not feel my legs or my feet under me. I felt as if I were floating. It felt like something was around me, protecting me. I kept thinking, do not turn around and run. That is what he wants you to do so he can shoot you in the back. Nothing to run and hide behind anyway. I continued walking to him while staring into his eyes. I felt no matter what, I was dead. I felt I would be shot regardless. I walked on up to him as he said, he cussed, okay, so I'm not going to say the cuss word. Um, I wanted you to run so I could shoot you in the back. Dad turned his back towards me and said, I'm going to hunt one of your siblings. I need to kill something today. I was scared and shaking all over. Dad turned his back towards me. A few seconds later, he tackled me. He forced me to have sex with him. At least the other kids were safe momentarily. The craziness ended briefly. There was one about be quiet. Our main form of transportation was the van. The only two seats the van had were the driver's and passenger seats. The passenger seat was a seat from a John Deere tractor. We children had to sit on the floor. We had to take care of several gardens. We had one that was a garden for a family. The main vegetables we planted, there were tomatoes, potatoes, green beans, purple peas, butter peas, squash, corn, and okra. We also had animals. We had turkeys, ducks, chickens, pigs, and three cats. As I indicated earlier, we also took care of our landlord, Mr. Gatlin's two ponds. We fed the fish daily. We had two other gardens we had to work on. We had giant sunflowers to deter birds away from his corn crops. As Dad turned from our driveway, he bellowed out, Who's talking? My siblings answered, Darlene. I did not think I talked, but I do not remember even getting into the van. I guess I could have talked because of dissociating. Dad pulled over to the side of the road. He got out of the van and went to the back while opening the van's back door. He venomously ordered, Darling, get out of the van. I was thinking, oh no, here we go again. Dad walked over to some trees. He broke off a thick switch. He started beating me all over my body with a switch while he was yelling, Are you going to talk again? I kept shaking my head no, but he wanted me to talk and say, No, sir. I was afraid to talk because I knew he was going to continue beating me until I said, No, sir. I finally said, No, sir. I couldn't understand why he kept beating me until I said, No, sir, but when I said it, Dad grew angrier. He tore into me. I was crying because I was in a lot of pain. I was hurting all over. I had welts all over my arms, legs, hands, and back. Some of the places were bleeding. We got back into the van and proceeded to work in Mr. Gatlin's garden. Mr. Gatlin was there, and he noticed the marks all over my body. He asked, What happened to Darlene? What are those welts? She's bleeding and appears weak. She said, Darlene fell into some blackberry bushes. Any movements were difficult. It stung terribly. Our landlord told Dad, You better let Darlene work in a shaded part because she looks weak. Dad looked at me and said, Go to a shaded part. After the landlord left, Dad said, He left. Now go work in the garden. I did as ordered, but I kept falling from being so weak. When I fell, Dad would come up behind me and hit me while calling me a klutz. Another day we were leaving the garden. We all got into the van. Someone shut the van door before I could move my finger. My finger was jammed, but I couldn't feel it. I knew better than to talk. One of my siblings hollered out about my finger being stuck in the door. Dad drove a little more and parked the van. He opened the door. He fussed at me, saying, Why didn't you say anything? I didn't answer because I was afraid to speak. It shows again how I had God watching out for me. I did not lose a finger. There was a lineup. We never knew what we did wrong that warranted all the supposed discipline. Dad yelled out for us children to come to him. We had to stand in a straight line like military people do. Stand straight, shoulders up, tuck in your tummy, stare straight ahead. The majority of the time he questioned us on who stole some of his money. No one stood forward and admitted to being a thief. Dad would start at the top of the row, spanking each person. He asserted, I will continue whipping and beating you all until someone steps forward and confesses. Dad either used a belt, a limb, and or his whip. Someone would finally confess, but they would be beaten even further. Days later, Dad later remembered where he spent the money. He apologized to us, but that was never stopped him from doing this repeatedly. He was a sicko for sure, wasn't he, Jackie? Then I got that about the outbreak of tornadoes, which that's not the part of the abuse, but that's something that it was really scary. living through that. And here's one about another teacher. Mrs. Weaver was my fifth grade homeroom and English teacher. She was an inspiration to me. The way she viewed life was that her glass was always half full. She had a unique way of teaching. It was never boring. But this is coming from someone who loved English. Sometimes she tested our reading skills. I was scared when it was my time. Mrs. Weaver had a chair she moved to sit in front of the person as he or she read. I was surprised when she said, Darlene is the best reader in the class. Darlene pauses perfectly after the commas and the periods at the end of the sentences. She also uses the proper pronunciations. I hung my head with embarrassment, but also with pride. Mrs. Weaver's teaching style was different from any teacher I had ever had. She had a board game for every story we read. It was interesting to see what she would come out with the next time. Mrs. Weaver was great at giving compliments to all of her students. In my opinion, her qualities made her a positive role model. Yes, I was. I was subjected to horrific. My siblings that called my parents role models, heroes and stuff. They're sick. Mrs. Collier was my fifth grade science teacher. I did not know science could be interesting. Learning how prisms and how the colors appear on the rainbow was fascinating. Understanding the names of tools in the laboratory, such as a flask and bios, and how they were used was fun. But she was different from Mrs. Weaver. For some reason, one classmate was always late. She did not let him have an explanation or a letter from the parent. She just paddled him every day. She paddled him. I felt so bad for the student. But I know some of the family owned a convenience store, so I imagine he had to wait on a ride from someone. Although he was late, he may have had a good reason. It may have not have been his fault. It was horrible. She would continually paddle. One day Mrs. Collier came into the room stating, Whoever doesn't have their homework, we get a paddling. Marlene tapped me on the shoulder as she whispered, Darlene, I don't have my homework. Did you do your homework? I whispered, I always do my homework. I turned back around and my homework was gone. The teacher asked, Who doesn't have their homework? I sheepishly raised my hand. Miss Collier asked, Why don't you have it? I replied, I think Marlene took my homework. She asked me if I had mine because she didn't do hers. Miss Collier replied, Well, you should have your hands on it the whole time. Stand up so I can paddle you. Boy, I was mad at Marlene for stealing my homework. I did not feel it's right for me to get into trouble while Marlene was the guilty one. I felt so mistreated. I no longer liked science. Prisms, colors, tools, and laboratories no longer interested me. There was a talk. We always knew what type of talk Dad was going to have with us by which room we were in. If he wanted everyone in the girls' bedroom, the military lineup displayed was to be enforced. In the spare bedroom, where there were no any beds or any furniture, all of us had to sit on the floor against the walls. This meant Dad was going to be threatened. We were all sitting as Dad ranted and raved. He meant this discussion for five of us Gwen, Charles Jr., Marlene, Derek, and I. Dad exclaimed, You are all going to visit your mom this summer. You all better not tell about the abuses, or the next time you will not be lucky to live. I began shaking. I did not want to go to mom's. And then this is about when the last time I remember seeing my mom, was back when I was on the radio station, on the TV station, TV program, the Benny Carl show. I could not remember why I was so afraid of her, but now after therapy, I know why I disliked her so much. Anyway, Mom and Daddy LC won the custody case. We arrived home. Well, we went to celebrate, and I told y'all what had happened. I'm going to go past that about she's saying that about the food anyway. They went ahead and they got the dinner, and I had to starve. I finally got back and said their dinner was good. They were full. They asked me what I ate. I said I didn't get to eat, and my stepdad said, "I guess you might be able to eat tomorrow." I wanted to cry so badly. I knew it was not okay to ever to show emotions. I did get close to my stepdad at times. He would be on the front porch drinking a Colt 45. He would ask if I wanted one. Finally, I said I did. I drank one with him. We were best buds as long as I drank. I did not like that so much. I was only 11 years old. The majority of the time I ate, I had to sneak inside and fix myself a condiment sandwich. Now I hate sandwiches. There was a skip at school instance. Da da da. Get past that. I played a danger game also, which I really was giving up. I was tired of my stepmom trying to get my birth mom trying to get me to prostitute myself out, and I wouldn't do it. I was tired of the abuse. I was tired of going hungry. I was tired of having to take care of myself at the young age of 11. It started innocently. It turned into a daily game of risk, but I did not care. I thought if I died from it, then it was just my time. I doubted anyone would miss me. No one except people at school had seen me for days. I felt so alone. I had been so used to not eating that I could not eat at school. Whenever I opened the doors to the cafeteria, the smell of food was nauseating. Since I was not used to eating anything except mayonnaise, ketchup, salt, and pepper sandwiches, that was all I usually had daily, and I was not going to beg for food. I was tired of being a twin. I was tired of people comparing my twin and me. I was me. I was an individual. I wanted to be myself. I grew tired of people saying I was a smarter or prettier twin. It may be, it might be a compliment to some, but I just wanted to be me. I wondered if Marlene had ever felt the way before. Way also. Then later on, I found out differently. But we lived right beside the railroad tracks. The train would usually be unloaded quickly. I had to walk to school. When I was on the other side, at the other school, the bus would pick us up. My siblings had friends who took them to school, but no one would offer to take me. I had to walk to school, even in the storms. One day a train was at a standstill on the tracks blocking my way to school. I needed to get there. I did not want to be late. I decided to crawl under the train, but try not to get my clothes dirty. I was nervously thinking about different things, such as what if the train starts moving? Would I have time to finish getting to the other side without getting hurt? Will anyone tattle on me? Phew, I made it. I went on to school that day. Later, I was playing hopscotch on the sand near the train tracks. I drew out the hopscotch board. Another train came and stopped. I started watching and paying attention to how the train moves. When it starts, I kept my eyes on the wheels and the train tracks. Soon, I noticed the rhythm of the trains. Another train stopped. I decided to see if it was okay if I went under the train again. I did it. It felt exhilarating. I noticed it was still at a stop. I heard it start up. I wondered how many times I could get from one side to the other side before it would go too fast. I kept playing that dangerous game numerous times. I stopped playing it after I tripped and slid. Frightfully, my foot hung up in between the track and the wood at the railroad crossing. Frantically, I tried removing my foot before the train ran over it. Luckily, I got it out in time. My shoe was still in between the rail and the wood. I quickly retrieved my shoe. I fled away from the train. I knew how lucky I was to escape injury when I played this foolish game. I found out years later a neighbor told Mom Hilda about me repeatedly going back and forth under the trains, even when they began to move. Hilda implored her that it was okay. She was tired of me anyway. I laughed about it. I never wanted to live with her anyway. At the time, I did not understand why I was apprehensive towards her. It did not take long for me to understand my reason. I had more pride in myself than to succumb to Hilda's wishes. When push came to shove, I cared. I stopped it. I knew I had to like me for me. I knew when I grew up, I knew how I would love to treat my kids. I would daydream about having kids, taking care of them and their needs. when they would be 3 or 4 years old. I would hold them, kiss their cuts and boo boos, and comfort them when they had a nightmare. Finally, yet most importantly, I would listen to them. By doing this, my children would know they mattered and their needs would be met. Scary game. I was tired. I didn't want to prostitute myself, and she was telling me I had to get a job and prostitute myself, and I wasn't going to do it. There was another friend of mine, well, another sister, sorry, that was her boyfriend. I called him Travis Stover. Uh, her, my sister came to visit, my sister Angelic, and it was always a treat when she came. I always loved being around her. When we were visiting, Gwen and Travis went to look into an empty house to see how the rooms looked. Gwen and Travis came back. I wanted to see this for myself. Travis volunteered to go with me in case I may be too short to see, in which he would let me to see. I could see inside the spacious rooms. I remember the short set I was wearing. The shorts are blue plaid with a light blue T-shirt. After I viewed the last room, he started playing with my short bottoms. I forgot, but traffic was stronger than me. I thought, but Travis was stronger than me. He undid my shorts hurriedly and proceeded to lick me. I kept trying to push him away, but regrettably he won. See my stepdaddy, Elsie, going to the garage behind our house. I wanted to scream, but I was worried about him hurting me too. I feared he might hurt or kill me since he was on probation for murder. Gwen rounded the corner and saw her boyfriend doing this to me. She shouted angrily, I'm going to tell. Travis ran after her. I was petrified. So I hid out in the cow pasture in front of our house. I finally decided to go inside. I was afraid of the unknown. I sighed in relief since she didn't tell. I'm glad I got to go back and visit my sister Angelic. Okay, past the hearing test, past all that. That was different. That wasn't as bad. Moved back with Dad. Daddy LC drove Marlene, Charles Jr., and me to meet Dad in between where we lived with Mom Hilda and where Dad and Mom Sue lived. Marlene wanted to come with me to keep the twins together. It was a pleasant surprise. Their behavior had improved immensely. They had moved from where we lived with them last. Dad and Sue still had the same jobs. Things seemed strange at the new place we were living in. We lived beside an old shack, which we did not have as many animals we did before the move to Mom Hilda's and Daddy Elsie's place. We had chickens, ducks, dogs, and some stray cats. I could not believe it. Dad was not shooting these animals. He fixed peace. He did not make me bark at my food anymore. We sat down at the table like a normal family. A lot had changed for the better. We had our own drinks with our meals. There was laughter and smiles. It was very nice. We had a lot to do because Gerald was getting married in a few days. Gerald's wedding was outside. It was beautiful. The bridal arch was adorned with beautiful white flowers. It started to sprinkle, but the rain never came down heavily, so the wedding still occurred outside. When school began, we were the only Caucasians on the school bus. Our driver told us to sit up front to be sure no one bothered us. He was a nice man, although he was of a different race. I grew up in a time when racism was a big issue. I never downed anyone. I knew God loved us all. I used him as an example to love others. I learned not to judge by the color of one's skin. I empathized with African Americans and how they must have felt while being discriminated against. It was Daddy Charles' short-lived happiness. It was a cold November night of the same year we came back to Daddy Charles and Sue's house. We had been back since the beginning of June. I was not feeling well. I had bronchial pneumonia again. Dad told Sue to go take the other kids to church. He was going to stay home and take care of me. He lit a fire in the fireplace. It was very hot in the house. He covered me with blankets, trying to knock my fever out. He made me peanut brittle. He came back into the living room, offering me some of his freshly cooked candy. He said, I sent Sue to church because I had something very important to tell you. I'm sorry for the abuse I had done to you, but Sue made me do it. My dad was a cruel person. He was an adult, and he had a choice. He did it on his own. It hurt me when he blamed others, but I thought it was a big step for him to admit he was wrong. Quip, I have a certain job and work to do. I will be gone for a few days. I'll be back to get you. He left into November. A few days later, around midnight, the phone rang. Sue came in and woke us up, stating, Get up, your dad is dead. We all got up and went to the kitchen. I was watching Sue, so I already knew Dad was dead. I'm not going to further into that story. Going further down. Sorry. Hello, Cash. How you doing there, buddy? And here's on the new house. Sue received insurance money for Dad's accidental death and purchased a home with some acreage. The house was roomy and spacious. It was sitting on land which was 17 plus acres. Soon after moving, I heard a conversation Sue had with Marlene. She said, Marlene, you are not loved or wanted. You need to move back with your mom, Hilda. So she did. Charles Jr. was convinced to join the military. When he got out of the army, he moved back home with Mom Hilda. I was only one left of Dad's and Hilda's children living with Sue. Bart, May, and Paul and I were the only children living at home. Paul was now in the sixth grade, which Paul was a half brother, so he was, Dad's too, so, but not a full blooded. Bart ended up quitting school, as did May. Paul played baseball, and I would usually watch over him. One evening, Paul came into my bedroom frightened. He was white as a sheet. He said, I'm scared. I just saw Mom and Bart having sex. I thought, oh no. So he just saw his mom and his brother having sex together, right? My story, yeah. I thought, oh no. But it wasn't surprising to me. I had to comfort Paul now. I asked him, how do you know they were having sex? I knew most sixth graders mistook kissing for sex. He replied, they were both naked. I replied, okay. He further stated, I'm afraid she might try to have sex with me when I grow older. Sue was not as mean to me as she was before, but her violence began again. May and I had a May and I had a chore list Sue wrote out for us daily. May did not go to school, so she had the entire day to do her portion. To my dismay, she did none. I would get off the bus approximately 30 minutes before Sue came home from work. There was not much time to do chores. All six beds were unmade. Both of the bathrooms were filthy. Dusting and vacuuming needed to be done. The dishes needed to be washed and put up. The floors needed to be swept and mopped. She came home in rage. May always got away with not cleaning by telling Sue that she instructed me to do her chores as well as mine. Oh, wow. That's awesome, Cash. I got my butt bruised severely. I thought it was an injustice for Sue to reprimand me for not doing May's work. It was tough enough to get my chores completed before Sue got home. Although chores were now my responsibility, it was impossible to have all the clothes washed, dried, and put up within 30 minutes, much less the entire house cleaned. Later on, May had a son. It grew harder on me because now I had to take care of the child when I got home. I did not have time to do my homework. I started failing school because of being able to study. Super made me to go to church. Religion was very important to me. I would sneak out of the house to attend church services, but I knew there would be repercussions. Sorry, my speech is a little off today. I did not care. I thought about how other Christians were tortured because of their religious beliefs. It soon took a toll on me. I stopped going because the beatings wore my 15-year-old body down. You got that right. Here's another way that she controlled right here. At times I would be washing dishes. All of a sudden I felt a sharp pain in my buttocks. Sue had kicked me as she bellowed, "Get that chip off your shoulder." When I smiled, Sue would kick at me and yell, "Get that grin off your face." Things escalated. I would be sitting on the couch near Sue, and I had to go to the bathroom. Therefore, I stood up and headed to the bathroom. She ordered, "Sit back down. You didn't ask me if you could get up." I obeyed her, and I sat back down. I then asked, "May I please be excused to go to the bathroom?" Sue said yes. I stood again and headed toward the bathroom. Sue instructed me to sit back down. She replied, "You forgot to ask which foot do I want you to start walking on?" I felt dumbfounded as I sat back down. I asked, "Which foot do you want me to start walking on?" As I walked to the bathroom. She told me which foot and then permitted me to go to the bathroom. I said, "Thank you." I smiled at her to think I was okay with it. I knew I had better not have an upset expression, or she would order me to my room, make me undress, and bend me over the bed as she belted me all over my body. She even used a belt buckle at times. She did not care. Every Sunday we started going out to eat at a steak restaurant. When we got home 2 Sundays in a row, I had to go to my room and strip so she could give me my punishment. Sue was cursing me as she belted me, exclaiming, "People came up to me and told me she shouldn't have taken anyone as ugly as you are in a public place. Your looks made the people lose their appetites." Sue asked me weekly to go eat with them, but I started saying I was not hungry. I stayed home, although I was famished. Christmas mornings were different from when Dad was alive. We got presents. May and Bart got stereos, new clothing, records, and everything they asked for. My gifts were May's gifts she received last year. At least I had gifts. I did not have to trash them. I enjoyed unwrapping presents I was able to keep. Thank you so much, Cash. And here's another one that Aunt Lottie and Aunt Zelda came to our house. They decided to take Marlene and me home with them. I was always nervous around Uncle Charles, but I didn't know why. He decided to go to his rental house. I was curious about how it looked since we had lived there before. At the time, I could not remember anything about the house except the outside. I saw a door on the side of the house. I was curious about where the door led to. I opened it and saw Uncle Charles urinating. I closed the door hurriedly as he tried to force me inside. I started walking around nervously because I didn't understand why he wanted me in the bathroom with him. About an hour later, I finally decided to go back to Aunt Zelda's and Uncle Charles's house. One day, I decided to give Uncle Charles a chance. I was hoping that I wasn't overreacting, so I decided to hug him. Aunt Zelda and May were in the living room watching a show. As Uncle Charles and I hugged, he turned me around with my back facing his front. He began pinching my nipples. I struggled to get away from him. I scurried towards the room Aunt Zelda was in. With Uncle Charles having two wooden legs, it was hard for him to catch me. I made it to the doorway when one of Uncle Charles's legs ran into the china cabinet. Bam! I froze as Aunt Zelda and May looked up. I felt white as a sheet. Aunt Zelda exclaimed, "Charles, are you trying to mess with Darlene again?" I could not believe my ears. Now I understood why I was so fearful of him. I would never, ever let Uncle Charles get that close to me ever again. It's okay. That's fine. Arnold's attack. Sue's best friend's son Arnold stayed with us for close to a month. He brought his Doberman picture dog named Hulk with him. Arnold told Hulk to attack and pointed at Paul. Paul had climbed on the doorknob to avoid him. Arnold grabbed him right before he snapped more at Paul. He was showing me that I better do as he tells me or else. Another time showing me was when Arnold taught Hulk how to grip in my presence. Arnold took me outside to a tree limb. Before this incident, he pulled part of a limb down and ordered grip. His dog sunk his teeth tightly on the limb. Arnold let go of the limb, but Hulk still had a tight grip on it. He had the limb in his mouth for about 30 minutes. Finally, he went under him and said, "Drop." The dog let go of the limb and it fell into Arnold's arms. I wonder why he showed me what Hulk would do until I found out, regrettably, one night after coming home from a date with Jeff. Jeff walked me to the door. We kissed goodbye. I walked inside, seeing Arnold sitting on the couch. I was a few steps in, and he ordered me to go to my room and change into shorts. I said, "I'm going to bed." He ordered, "Do as I told you. Your mom, Sue, is in on it." I didn't know for sure, and I knew no one cared, but I felt like I had to do as I was told before he would order his dog to attack me. We went outside to below Sue's bedroom window. As he was raping me, I saw Sue smiling as she was watching from her bedroom window. I was thinking, "Oh my God, please help me." Sue it was in on this rape. After Arnold was through with his heinous act, he went to the grapevines and pulled a leaf off to clean himself with. I was not allowed to go in until he said I could. I was thinking, I hope you get a rash from this grape leaf. I was 14 years old, 14, 15 years old. So this had to be uh, about 1978, I believe. He went back home to Florida. Within a month, Sue's friend Polly told me that Sue made him go home because she was afraid he might rape me. I told her, "Yeah, right. She knew it already happened." What a lie. Last I heard about Arnold, he was serving time in Slammer for another rape. I was born around, let's see, let me think about this. So, 1976, I was 14, 77, I was 15. So I was either 15 or 16. I think I was 15 during this time. The next year is when the brother incidents. And here's about a discussion. It had been a tough bout. I had just turned 18 about a week before. I was now considered an adult, but I was still in high school. I mainly focused on finishing high school and developing my religious beliefs. I could receive the checks for Dad's death. We had a pending lawsuit since Dad died in an accident at work. Dad had been dead several years when the case was almost settled. I was in my bedroom. I decided to go get something to drink. I was walking to the added on from the added on part of the house to the odor section. I heard Sue and I heard two other kids discussing me. Something made me hide and listen. I knew there were three people in the discussion: Sue, Bart, and May. It went like this, although I cannot remember which one said what because it shocked me. "Well, what do we do with her?" "We can put her in an institution." "Yeah, they will believe she's crazy." "What if they believe her stories?" "We'll be in serious trouble." "So what are we going to do?" "We got to get rid of her soon." Well, we could kill her and make it look like suicide. They will believe she committed suicide. When do we do this? This weekend. I did not know if they heard me walking in the front of the house and they said this to scare me, but I sincerely believed them. I had to find a way out. The bedroom door creaked as I faintly fell against it in disbelief. I couldn't fathom what I was hearing. My stepmom Sue and two of her children, Bart and May, were discussing ways of getting rid of me. They were talking about killing me and making it look like suicide. What did I do so wrong to get them to hate me so much? I mean, I was already their slave, their robot, without my own thoughts or feelings. I did think about God often. They couldn't take that away from me. Uh-oh, Bart must have heard the door creak, but I fell against it. He was like, "Everyone quiet. I hear Darlene coming from her room." I drew in a deep breath as I silently prayed, "Lord, please help them think I did not hear them. Please keep me safe." I stepped back away quietly from the door, 2 steps back, and proceeded to walk normally down the hallway. I glanced at the three of them as I turned to the right to go into the utility room, kitchen/utility room. They were sitting quietly as they watched me go into the kitchen. I knew I had to pretend I did not hear the conversation. Phew! I made it safe momentarily. They had no clue that I overheard their conversation about killing me and making it look like suicide. I bent over to let out some air. I was dumbfounded. I realized I better stand up straight. If they came into the kitchen with me bent over like that, then the cat would be out of the bag. I decided that I would start exercising. I breathed in a deep breath as I began doing toe touches. I was thinking right hand touching left foot with the left hand in the air and reversing action. I didn't stand a 10. I was thirsty and remembered why I first came into the kitchen before I was caught off guard. When I bent down to grab a drink, I noticed Sue as she came into the kitchen. She had her hands on her hips and asked, "Are you okay?" And so I thought, I got this in parentheses. Okay, this puzzled me. Asking if I was okay, yet a few minutes prior they spoke of eradicating me. However, I had to keep up a charade. I stood up with my beverage and answered, "Yes, ma'am." She stated, "I heard you breathing hard, so I came to check on you." "Yes, ma'am. I just exercised," Sue stated. "But you weren't breathing like that when you went into the kitchen." "No, ma'am. I was exercising. I did toe touches in here." Sue asked, "Did you hear a conversation a few minutes ago?" I hated a lie, but I had to save myself. "No, ma'am. Were you all talking? I just saw y'all sitting there quietly." "Okay," Sue concluded. Was there anything I should have heard or should know, Mom?" Sue replied, "No, everything's fine." She turned and went back to the living room. I prayed silently again, asking God to guide and protect me. Please lead me in the direction you want me to take. Jeffrey came to see me that afternoon. I confided in him. That's okay. Yeah, the time context, yeah. And I ended up getting married 1981, so I was 18 and I was going to be 19 and 1981, so it's 1980 when, see, I got married in 1981. So it's 18 when I got married, so it's got to be 1980, yeah. 1980 is when I was 18, and that's when the elopement and my boyfriend came over and we discussed getting married and stuff and him skipping school and we ended up getting married that day. So we ended up moving in with his mom. There was a lot of hassles with that, and then we moved to the city. Um, and I'm going on further on down because that's not as important. Okay. Then Bart's boisterous behavior. This Bart is the stepbrother. I was so tired a lot of the time. Pregnancy can wear out a body. At this time, I was pregnant with our first son. Um, at times, I had woken up from the banging on my front door. I worried something drastic happened. It was just Bart. He had to go use a men's room. My body was trembling from the banging on the door. Bart did this a few times. Frankly, I was petrified of him. He usually left after he did his bathroom deal. I did not think of any other memories. All I knew was a fear of him. And there was a neighbor's emergency where he attacked me as well. Really? Other person's story? Wow. Similar. Wow. A lot similar to mine, huh? Then there's a story about a neighbor attacking me and stuff, but I'm going to try to get to the gist of when I came to a realization about the realization about my family. He was born in 1980. You're a young one. And here's one bad thing that happened during our marriage too, and maybe it was partly my fault on what had happened. Hello, silence, wham, type of that. Okay, after I showered and dressed, I loved going outside as I brushed my long locks of hair. Jeffrey and an upstairs neighbor were pacing on the concrete front porch. I noticed their silence as I sat on the blue kitchen chair, a place outside to let my hair dry in the warm sun. It felt healing and cleansing every time I sat in the warm sunlight. Jeffrey and the upstairs neighbor kept walking from one end of the porch to the other end. I kept telling Jeffrey and Ross hello, but no one would respond. I touched Ross with my hairbrush as I said a friendly hello. As they passed by the third time, Ross twisted his body and kicked my 8-month pregnant belly like it was a football. Frightened, I whispered a surprise, ouch! Jeffrey quipped, you shouldn't have touched him with your hairbrush. I fell to the concrete porch because of the pain. Ross ran and hid back in his apartment. I reasoned that is where he went because I did not see him go, but he was gone. Jeffrey did not help me up. I had to use my arms to pull myself into our apartment. I was in immense pain, but Jeffrey did not care. He did not help me nor get me any medical attention whatsoever. The baby needed to be checked on, but Jeffrey refused medical care for me. I felt like I was going to die. I pulled myself up on the futon that was a part of the furnished apartment we rented. I replied, please help me. He said, Jeffrey said, you did this to yourself. Now, people need to understand this. Marriage was in the ruins from day one. I thought he would protect me as he did once before. I was sorely wrong. I'm just grateful to God for helping me by keeping my son alive. Thank you, God. You're a young pup. Yes, you are. Thank you. And here's the realization that there was a problem. In a quest to understand me, I failed to realize how tragic my childhood had been. I've always known I'd been abused. I had always believed that as long as I had accepted it and not focused on the abuse, I would be okay. That idea was farther from the truth. The realization of the severity started after my second child was born. I had a tubal ligation. Both of my pregnancies have been difficult. The second child's birth usually comes faster than the first. This, however, was not the case with me. I frequently visit my OBGYN, Dr. Billy Waters. I had previously needed medical care for two pregnancies, which resulted in miscarriages. One of the pregnancies, I went to him saying, I am pregnant and bleeding. I believe I'm having another miscarriage. He didn't even think I was pregnant at the first. He couldn't tell by the pelvic exam, but the blood test confirmed my suspicions. He instructed me, come back in a week. I think you will miscarry the baby by then. There's no way to save my baby. I was mortified. I felt desolate. I felt no one cared. I had seen other people hold someone when they miscarried. I was sad, feeling dejected and resentful. I was hoping someone would hold me, console me, let me express my feelings. I needed to be comforted. I kept being told, you're young. You can have more children. Stop crying. Those words felt cruel to me. With the complications from my first pregnancy and then two miscarriages, I felt distraught. I doubted I could have another child. I was flustered because I had family members who at the time were either aborting their pregnancies or abandoning their children. See, this was before I knew of that baby that I had as a teenager, okay? I was devastated. It just wasn't fair. I couldn't comprehend how my family could abort or abandon. I finally became pregnant with my second son when I was about 5 months, and I started bleeding profusely. I was scared, petrified. I went to see Dr. Waters, but he was on vacation. I had to see his associate, Dr. Jiverson. He said it is normal to bleed during pregnancy. I knew differently. He went ahead and performed an ultrasound on me. Then he came back and said, your child is a waterhead. Go to the hospital tomorrow for me to perform a DNC. I said, I know that a DNC cleans remaining tissues after a miscarriage. What about my baby? He or she is still here. I haven't had a miscarriage. Dr. Jiverson clicked. I will take the baby when I do the DNC. The DNC will take care of that. I started crying inconsolably and then retorted, "Oh, no, you don't. I am keeping my baby." The answer is no. He said, "You shouldn't care about your baby because it's a waterhead. I will leave you for a little while you think about it." I said, "I won't change my mind." Dr. Jobson came back about an hour later. He asked, "What did you decide?" I rapidly replied angrily, "No, I'm keeping my child." He stated, "Okay, I'll give you longer to think about it. I'll be back in a little while to let you think about it longer." Then he walked off. This was punishment. I gave him my answer. It was as if he wasn't accepting my decision. If I left, insurance wouldn't pay. I had to wait for him regardless. This was so excruciating. I felt my baby would be okay. I would not listen to anyone who wanted to take my child. I felt this was my final chance to have another child. I wasn't about to give this baby up. I didn't care what he told me. I am keeping him. If I had miscarried him, yes, it would have hurt. But to willfully abort, no way. I wouldn't. I couldn't. Dr. Jefferson came back into the room. He pulled up a chair next to me and asked, "Will you admit yourself to the hospital?" I told him, "I gave you my answer." He stood up to walk out. "I will give you a little more time." "I don't need more time." I thought, "You need to let me go home so I can tend to my other child and my husband Jeffrey." I felt like said, "I know if I left without your approval, insurance won't pay for this visit. You won't accept my decision. You keep telling me that I shouldn't care since my baby's a waterhead. This is a human being, and I won't let you take him or her away from me without a fight." He let me go, and I didn't have to say this. He must have seen the anger in my eyes. I saw Dr. Waters at my regular appointment time later on. He validated that it wasn't normal to bleed during pregnancy. He said, "If it happens again, come back to my office." It happened again. Other times, Dr. Waters wasn't there, but Jefferson was. He stated, "You should have let me take your baby." I was infuriated with him, but still worried about my baby. I knew something wasn't right, but I refused to listen to Dr. Jefferson's advice. Dr. Waters came back and said I had been bleeding again. Unfortunately, it had been Dr. Jefferson since you were on vacation. He tried to convince me to let him take my child. Dr. Waters was infuriated about his associate wanting to take my child. He said, "I will leave you an emergency number. Regardless if I'm on call or not, if you call, I'll make sure I get the message. Under no circumstances whatsoever are you to see Dr. Jefferson." I emphatically declared, "Thank God," and I hugged my doctor for this. I gave birth to a healthy son. The first son was named Jeremy Scott. I named the second son Xander. When Xander was about 6 months old, Dr. Waters wanted to do a hysterectomy. I felt too young since I was only in my 20s. I held on as long as I could. 4 years later, I had grown tired of bleeding every time I tried to sleep or if I bent over. I went for a second opinion for a hysterectomy. He informed me that my uterus was doubled in size. So that's why I had to have. Exactly. Exactly. See, it was a healthy baby. So if I would have listened to him, he would have made me abort a healthy baby. After the hysterectomy, I was in the hospital for 5 days. Dr. Waters came to my room after I was alert enough after the surgery. He pulled up a chair and seated himself. He asked, "Have you been sexually abused?" I answered, "Yes, but it was a long time ago. I'm okay now." Dr. Waters further asked, "Have you ever had therapy for it?" I told him, "No, I haven't. I am fine. It is all in the past." He stated, "I removed scar tissue for 2 hours. I had to stop when you started bleeding profusely. I have never seen anyone with this amount of internal damage. You had to have been sexually abused a lot. You need to talk about it because of the magnitude of it." It didn't take long for the nightmares to begin. Every time I started drifting off to sleep, I began having flashes of the abuses that happened when I was a child. I found out they were called flashbacks. Anxiety set in. I was afraid to step out of the house for fear of being attacked. I was afraid to go to the mailbox. I was panicked whenever I had to go shopping. My anxiety affected me in many ways. I would watch each yellow line in the middle of the road as I drove. Watching the doctor lying in the road caused severe stomach issues. I had to turn my attention to something else, like the radio, which helped tremendously. When I was in the store, panic mode struck again. I would have to go to the bathroom immediately. At times, felt so flushed, my heart raced wildly. Everything was spinning. Thought I was going to lose consciousness, so I had to sit down before I fell down. The feelings, memories, nightmares, and anxieties showed me that I needed to do as Dr. Billy Waters said. I came to the realization I needed help. That's how I knew I had a problem. Thanks to the doctor letting me know about that. And I had a therapist that was very bad, and I'm not going to go there about his essay that he had done, but psychi- a, what do you call that? A church member had paid for the therapist, and the therapist was doing inappropriate things to me, and he said, well, he's allowed to do it. It's okay. And here's the genealogy. Here's where the state trooper ordeal. I became interested in genealogical research. I phoned a few times in which I met so many we could exchange information. One person was a state trooper. We decided to meet on the genealogy floor of a library. Before I even sat down, he replied, I remember you. I responded, from where? He said, I remember doing you when you were a little kid. It still excites me. With him, but I had no choice. My legs went out from underneath me with disbelief. I fell into the chair as I caught myself from falling straight onto the floor. The state trooper said, my dad had over 300 child porno tapes, and you were in the majority of them. I asked, how old was I? How old were you? Thank you, Cash. He responded, you were 4, and I was about 9. It went on until you were about 11 or 12. Well, since then, I had done research, y'all, and I found out he was really 17 years old when I was about 4 years old. So he was not no 9 years old. I was flustered as I quit. I hope you disposed of the tapes now that your dad is dead and you are a state trooper. No, Dad had a buddy with whom they watched the child pornos together. I gave them to him. And I said, please, can you get the tapes and destroy them? No, I gave them to him. So they are his. The state trooper is now deceased, and I know nothing of where these tapes are. What that state trooper told me, it validated some flashbacks I had. And here was where I finally got to see a good psychiatrist. And Jeffrey's insurance finally covered psychological appointments. I was referred to Dr. Kemp's office. I visited him for the evaluation and the treatment. Dr. Kemp was short in stature. His persona reminded me of Mario from Mario Brothers video games. Dr. Kemp helped me more than any other person had. You see, he didn't violate me, and he believed my stories. Yep, you got that right. Exactly. I asked, why do you believe me? He replied, because when I ask you a question, you answer right away. A lot of people who answer quickly, the stories do not fit in with what they said prior. Although your story sounds hard to believe, I can tell you are being honest. I was shocked. I could not believe someone finally believed me. Dr. Kemp began to turn my psychological health around. I still have so many gaps in my memory. With Dr. Kemp, I did not watch the clock. I informed him about my prior therapist, Sam Saber. Dr. Kemp tried to convince me to take Sam to court while he was inappropriate, since he was inappropriate with me. I spoke with Jeffrey about Dr. Kemp's suggestion. He refused to support me and proved to me that he cared about me, showing Mr. Saber violated me. Jeffrey responded, I do not want trouble. I quipped, I do not want trouble either. I know he did some things to me that's not right for a therapist to do. He replied, Sam Saber told me and Mr. Pinson he had to do some unconventional therapy on you to bring things out to heal you. I replied, that does not mean he can touch my private areas or even has semen on his pants. He kept the door locked, even at his home, to make sure no one came in. His wife tried to come into the room when I kept yelling for him to get off of me. We're silent when she tried to come in because he told me to hush. How I wish I would have yelled something, call the police. He won't remove his hand from my breast. You think that's okay? Jeffrey nodded coldly. Yes, unconventional therapy. I walked away feeling like a whipped dog. My head was hanging low for having to remain silent, although I was violated. I was thinking I was treated like a prostitute. You and Mr. Pincher paid him, and he could do anything he wanted with me. I sighed as I knew Sam Saber did, as he pleased, without any repercussions. I kept wondering how come no one cared about me. They even berated me. It's just more control. I gave Dr. Kemp the sad news. Dr. Kemp replied, well, you can do it without Jeffrey at your side. Incredulously, I retorted, I can't without support. I will be hounded at home a lot from my elders and Jeffrey. I'm sorry, but thanks for caring. Now here comes the bad thing, okay? One visit from Dr. Jack Kemp, my world seemed to turn upside down. I could not believe the flashes of memory. Devastating is not even close to what I was feeling. I was seeing Sue hold me down. Part of my body was in the living room, while the upper part was in the dining room. See, that was a doorway right there. That's why it was like that, okay? She firmly held my arms down while her son, Bart, raped me. It proceeded to another flash in which I was outside and Sue was building a huge bonfire. That was normal in the South, so I thought nothing of it until I saw the tires in and around ready to light fire. I asked, why are tires in the fire? Why so many? Sue replied, so the fire would continue to burn. Innocently, I did not understand why she would want a fire burning straight for days. I was afraid something was going to catch fire. Some small embers might blow with the wind and catch some of the 18 plus acres ablaze. See, in all, there was 23 acres, okay? Maybe someone kept a watch on it. I don't know. I have so many splotches of memory, maybe I shouldn't remember it all. All of a sudden, I was exasperated. Everything just flitting around, yet hurling at me like rocks. I replied, I don't feel so good. May I lay down? Dr. Kemp replied, if you feel like it. I felt faint. Dr. Jack Kemp replied, small breaths. It's okay. Take your time. All of a sudden, I had a burst of energy with a disbelief of a memory. I jumped up, stated, oh no, that isn't right. Why? Why? I sobbed uncontrollably as I described to Dr. Jack Kemp. And now you, my deepest nightmare, my greatest horror. I saw Mama Sue make me lie down on the floor. I always did as Mama Sue said. I was her robot. I feared her. Sue had a white metal coat hanger or the end of a fly swatter. I was naked on the kitchen floor, and she was in between my legs. I do not remember giving birth, but I remember her handing me a baby boy as I was still lying on the floor. He and I bonded as he wrapped his tiny fingers around my index finger. Sue bent down and took him from my loving arms. I thought, where are you going with my baby? What are you going to do with him? Of course, I said nothing out loud for fear of Sue's retaliation. I watched her backside as she walked away. I was so worried about my baby. What is she going to do with him? Mama Sue made it to the kitchen counter to the right of the sink. I heard a door open, which I knew contained silverware. I did not expect to see what I was seeing. Sue! Mama Sue has a knife! Her arms reached upwards in the standing position. I saw the blade glistening in the light. Oh my God, please help me. No. As I watched the knife lower down to the direction of my baby, then another blackout. I do not know how I got my frail, weak child's body up, or how long it took me to get up, but I made it to the side door, which was by the carport. I watched Sue as she had a blue baby blanket and something all bundled up. Is she throwing my baby on the fire after she stabbed him? Why couldn't I protect my baby? Such a bad mom. Why didn't I remember this? I just want to die. Dr. Kent gently asked, do you have any proof? I said, no, wait, I sort of do. I'm so baffled. How could this happen? I told Dr. Kemp. I remember when I was pregnant with my first son while married, the nurse said I had a baby before. What did I do with it? I thought she was crazy. I would remember if I had a baby before, or so I thought. I said she even called the police, who referred me to the health department, who referred the health department them to the health department to question me. I told the police I did not have a baby before. I called my husband to come to pick me up and tell the police I did not have a baby before. Jeffrey left work to come and get me away from the situation, and he didn't know about a baby either. Dr. Jack Kemp replied, "There's your proof. A doctor knows if a woman has had a baby before. I won't call the police since there is no birth certificate for him. However, you could go to jail if your stepmom denies it and puts the blame on you. It will be a she said, she said. The way baby won't get no justice. I named him John Paul Clark after my deceased brother. Why did this happen? Why couldn't I protect my baby? It's all my fault. I want to die. I am no good. I hate myself. Why, why? That's always so harsh. Who's still in here? It just shows one person in here. Who's still in here right now? I'm sharing this so that people know that this stuff happens. Yeah, you're still here. Thank you. And as I said, then of course when then I got to the brunt of this stuff, and then I even saw when I first went to the first therapy, I was able to see that the sex abuse I thought started, well, the trafficking part started when I was 2 years old when my mom put me on the kitchen table. They had sold me to daddy's military buddy, and the guy used a beer bottle at me when my dad was stood behind him and watched, and my mom was at the front of the table. Yes, it was. And then when I was 4 years old, Dad cut me between my legs, so part of me is missing because of that also. And also, when I was 2 years old, my mom would take me places to restaurants, and I thought it was going to be mommy daughter time. Instead, it was to sell me to men. If they said that, hey, she looks cute, you want to buy her? Some of the men bought me, some of the men walked away, because I guess some of the men were good, and they didn't want to buy a kid. They didn't want to do that kind of stuff to a kid. They just walked away, which I thank them for walking away. You're over there. Yeah, this is so difficult, I had to tell, but I thought that I needed to get on here and express that it wasn't just my daddy that was cool to me. It was even my stepmom, my birth mom. It was a whole hellhole of people. Like when I was 10 years old. Yeah. During that baby story, I can't help but every time it brings tears to my eyes. It really hurts. It just really, it cuts to the core, knowing that somebody's that evil. I shouldn't laugh about it, but I thought it was funny when my stepmom died. It happened to be on Independence Day. Not last year, but the year before last. You're crying too? I'm sorry. There's a lot of emotion in all this, and I got a lot of naysayers, and I even had somebody at Facebook yesterday said that my story's a lie, and it's not a lie. Yep. It's horrendous, man. It's devastating. Yeah. The only way I survived is by God's graciousness and His mercy. They tried to destroy me, but it didn't work. All this stuff they done to me, I still survived. So now that's a lot of my truth out there. And I hope that a lot of people will inspire other people not to lose hope, not to lose faith, because if I made it, you can too. Don't lose hope. Sometimes I might not get to go to other people's broadcasts, or I hate that I'm not able to go support a lot of other YouTubers. But this is a lot of wear and tear on me, y'all. Sharing and trying to get other books written. Thank you. Lots of love for y'all. I appreciate y'all for caring. Y'all can share this. I want to thank y'all for coming, and I'll say God bless y'all. Don't lose hope, y'all. I know that my story will make you cry, but now look where I am today. Survived. Yeah, my own family. My own family would be in here, and they would threaten me. They done did on the Miss Texas show when I was sharing my story on part of on her channel. They got on there and they threatened me. That's all they ever want to do is try to destroy me, but that ain't gonna work. And let me tell y'all something funny. My sister wants to tell that Daddy never did anything sexual to us. But let me tell you this: she actually told my son, and my son came and told me, he said, "Mom, your sister said he never did anything sexual to y'all, but he would ejaculate all over your face when you were an infant." And somebody, if Daddy messed and ejaculated on our faces when we were an infant, does not show that he would do other things later on as well. So no matter what they try to do to me, the truth was out there. She told my son that my daddy did that. So now my son knows the truth about what I had to say was truth. I've got medical evidence proven about being cut. I had the hysterectomy proven that that had been done. I had so much done. Yes. So no matter what they try to do or say, all the evidence points to me being truthful. Even if I was to use my real name, which I'm not for my own kids' safety, you know, and for other people's safety, because I think I've got a mission to do is to help other people. Some person told me that I need to stop all my accounts and everything because I'm too sentimental. I'm like, no, my mission isn't about you. My mission is to help other people. I want to thank y'all so much, and I say God bless y'all, and I hope that I see y'all around more. That is common psychological, yet denial. Oh, but they want to admit they want to admit and say, well, just look at what they've been through. You know, that's what they tell me. Say, well, you know, Mom went through the times of Hitler, just what she been through. Dad, you can imagine what kind of stuff he went through if he did all this. No, look what I went through, and I didn't do this to my kids. Excuse me? But Daddy didn't go through what I went through, and look at the hell he gave me, you know? Excuse me? You cannot justify selling your kids, trapping your kids out, doing the sexual things to your kids. That does not constitute any reason for you to be able to do this. You are to protect your kids. You are to treasure your kids. You are to respect your kids. You are to treat them with decency, kindness, love, compassion. Your kids are not here to abuse, to violate. Exactly. And you could tell with the emotions that I got with it that I'm not lying about it too, because I break down so many times because I would be despicable if I lied about it. Now, I have a twin sister, and she was done some of the ways, but not the same exact ways of me. But a lot of her stories are lies because she wants to tell lies for attention, and I'm like, sister, the abuse was bad enough. The abuse was horrendous. Why do you want to add lies and say this particular other stuff happened when it didn't? Be honest. If you're not honest and you're caught in these lies, sister, guess what? Nobody's going to believe any of your stories that are true. You want people to believe that these things happen, be honest, tell the truth. Simple as that. Exactly. So me and her, it's a toxic relationship, so I had to do away with her, had to do away with my brother and sister. That's all for, you know, me being quiet, eradicate me still, everything. But I do have a one brother that is not toxic. So he's actually a good one. I want to thank y'all again for coming. And I say God bless and thank everyone who's here to support. And please keep up the good fight because this kind of stuff is happening too often. Like Cash had said, there's somebody else that's got similar story that he was reading. Some of the same things. This is happening too much. Thank you. Appreciate that. And I appreciate you trusting me and I appreciate you respecting me as well. Respect. I want to thank Jackie as well and the other people that are here that I don't see. I want to say thank you all. I want to say God bless y'all. I got to get ready for an appointment that I have in about 15 minutes. So y'all have an amazing day and the rest of the week. Treat yourself something good for yourself. Do something good for yourself because you are an amazing person. Don't forget it. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll be glad to. Yeah, hit me up at WhatsApp. All right. Well, I'll talk at y'all later, and God bless y'all. Okay. Or you can still message me. I might not. I can message a little bit and then get going. You know what I'm saying? So it will be all right. You go ahead and message me. It'll be fine. All right, right. Well, I love y'all, and thank y'all for coming and supporting. I hope this has answered a lot of questions that y'all might have been wondering. And if y'all need to ask me anything another time, feel free. God bless y'all. Thank you. Good night, everyone.